So hello, everybody. This is our common event between the Russian Ecospheres Research Network and Posthuman Studies Lab from Munich. This is titled Post-Soviet Ecologies, and we're very excited to discuss together for the coming 2.5 hours. My name is Philipp Kohl. I am the co-founder of this network together with Clemens Günther. I'm a research associate at Munich University, LMU, and also a postdoc research fellow at Zurich University at the Slavic Seminar. And we founded this network in 2022. It has about 15 members, some of whom are present here in the Zoom meeting, and we're from different fields. We're literary scholars, we're environmental historians, we're historians of science, all working on Russophone culture and science and ecological questions in these contexts. We decided to meet up with two very exciting persons today, which is a first in the history of our network, because we have done a couple of academic events. We have done two annual meetings, mostly among the researchers, but we were also continuously thinking about how we can open up the disciplinary focus of our network. We don't want to just think about ecology. We'll also want to look at it, listen to things, listen to problems, and see what artistic practices are being are out there, and especially with researchers / artists from Russia. It has been kind of hard to cooperate so far. We were always asking people, who can you recommend, who's working in this field. And so I was very lucky when Nikita and Ekaterina were at the colloquium of our institute in Munich, and so we had the idea to organize a shared meeting. And without further ado, I will just say what is going to happen today. I've already introduced myself. I've introduced our research network. I will now introduce Nikita and Ekaterina, and then we will have 3 parts. First, a presentation on the Ferations World project by Ekaterina and Nikita. And after about 30 minutes, we'll have a shared discussion of texts by Alexander Bogdanov and Trofim Lysenko. Quite an exciting combination, and I'm very excited to see where that goes. We will, of course, also discuss what Ekaterina and Nikita have been saying, but we'll not yet discuss the first text that you have seen that you have probably all read in the reader we provided. And this is part of the second presentation at about 7:30, which is a presentation of contemporary artistic projects, some of which you could already find in this essay. And some of these projects probably need visuals, need the representation, and need the slides. And luckily, Nikita and Katerina will provide them. They will show us what is being done, but they also will show us what they are doing with a particular project they described in the essay. So there will be quite a lot to discuss. So let's not waste any more time. I will just say who Ekaterina and Nikita are. They are research fellows currently at the Ludwig Maximilian University of Munich, the Department of Slavic Literature, and together they collaborate in the research project an anatomy lesson of the narrated adventure, adventure literature, and its theorization in the early Soviet Union. And also, they are founders of the Posthuman Studies Lab, a post-disciplinary research platform that unites scientists, artists, and philosophers in the collective rethinking of the ecological and political legacy of post-Soviet territories. You can find all of their projects on their website ferations.world. I will share the link later on in the chat. And the last episode of the lab's research was dedicated to a rethinking of non-human automated networks, and it was exhibited as a highlight of the 2022 Ars Electronica Festival. So the objects of the art have been sinkholes, oil, unstable compounds, and lately hogweed, but they will tell you more about the work in an instant before I say anything wrong. So I will just say a few words what Ekaterina and Nikita, who have relocated to Germany after the Russian invasion in Ukraine began, what they've been doing before. So Ekaterina has taught courses on critical posthumanism and biopolitical theory for about 6 years at the Art and Science International Educational Program of ITMO University St. Petersburg. She was the director of the main online contemporary art faculty at the Rodchenko School and Sreda Obuchenia in Russia. And under her leadership, there were created educational programs aimed at the development of regional art and its integration into international discourse. Nikita is a philosopher and a curator interested in ontological problems of unity and political ecological issues addressing the unity ideology. And before the war, Nikita gave courses at Lomonosov State University in Moscow, also at several leading art institutions in Russia and abroad, the New Center for Research and Practice in New York, Strelka Institute, Garage Museum of Contemporary Art, Winsawod, and New Holland. He also curated an academic program and the exhibition Gachen Displaced, the artistic research project at Ruhr University in Bochum, funded by German Research Foundation. So also I could name some of the impressive articles from the impressive publication lists, because as you can imagine, where there is more of what of that what you already read in the essay, but I guess we'll cut that short, and I will hand over to Ekaterina and Nikita, who will now start their presentation of the Operations World project.
Yeah, thank you very much, Philip, for the introduction. Yeah, moment, I guess, yes. Okay, yeah. Thank you very much for the introduction, and we'd like to say many thanks to the Russian Ecospheres team for inviting us and for the opportunity to share today our ideas, to exchange them somehow, I guess, maybe to struggle with discussing them, which would be also really nice to do, I guess. And we hope like this event will be productive for everyone. We will start with the short story of our lab and ideas, and then we'll go closer to the issues of today's discussion. So we will be changing together, I mean, throughout this story, throughout this discussion, because it's like our regular way of discussing things and presenting things. So let's start. So our lab was founded in 2018 in Moscow, but currently, like Philip said, because of the war in Ukraine, we are based in Munich, where we continue our work and research. And from the very beginning, we launched this initiative, this lab, as an independent opportunity for research and art. Our main goal unfold around our locality and situatedness, mainly the ecological politics of the post-Soviet material legacies. because a lot of Soviet ecological and transformational projects were made with no regard to disciplinary sciences. They mixed totalitarianism and ideology with philosophy and art to the extent that some of these creations might be considered like technological or biological art. However, these outcomes of Soviet engineering and transformation were dangerous and brought about a lot of tragedy and even catastrophes of different kinds. So the purpose of our lab from the beginning was to bring into light all the weird, queer, and monstrous creation and projects of the Soviet time to philosophically reflect on them and to artistically decompose them to understand why they were a part of our history and how to live through that kind of legacy. And like you can expect, it is not a job for one discipline, and this cannot be specifically located solely in academia. That is why we develop the lab activity around artistic institution and para-academic independent initiatives to bring together different specialists, namely scientists, designers, artists, philosophers, and many other people, for them to make something they've never done before, namely exhibitions, workshops, digital platforms, artworks, and other different mediums and formats. And the format of our work is defined by the current project. I mean, each project is suited to the main specific medium, like installation or digital platform or scholar publication. So no less important, a post-disciplinary methodology for us is citizen science, that is the distributed practice of field work and gathering archival data performed by people from different regions, countries, and even disciplinary areas. So citizen science for us is a multiplicity of local and small research by different agents. Sometimes it might be deeply personal and concern family histories, but the point of this kind of methodology is that it provides us not with a unified abstraction of some sole discipline, but rather with a kind of multi-perspectivism.
Yes, and in our work, it is important for us to rethink the term posthuman, as you can see it. So we have this word, this term is in our title. So this term is important for us. The idea of posthumanity and transhumanity, one way or another, is found in pre-revolutionary and early Soviet ideological projects. However, when we refer to these contemporary terms in the context of the USSR, in its politics, it is crucial to understand the division between posthumanistic ideas, posthumanistic values, what is non-human, and so on. So, and the processes of dehumanization of the human and humanization of the non-human, which is strictly connected to Stalinist totalitarian ideas of 1930s and late decades. However, we still would like to work with term. We tend to consider the posthuman as a bundle of all mortal beings who have found themselves on the edge of their habitats as a result of anthropogenic environmental catastrophes. So people and other creatures share ruined places, abandoned villages, and settled cities of current post-Soviet territories and Russia. So in our research, nature doesn't look like a communist paradise, like it could be described by, I don't know, Lysenko, for example. And equally, nature and its inhabitants closed in plastic waste and wires, rooted in polluted soil, do not look like those who came out of paradise or our communist paradise or once belonged to this place either. And in the context of the current war, when in Russia the topic of ecology has become a way of silencing the war, not noticing what is happening, the question of understanding the politics of nature and the post-human has come to us from a new angle. And our focus has naturally shifted to examining how the environmental topic works in its relationship to totalitarian agenda of the USSR and contemporary authoritarian Russia, which uses this topic very well, pretty much and pretty pretty much. So in general, Nikita and I try to critically rethink the link between Soviet ecological projects and their cohesion with the totalitarian ideas of Stalinist dehumanization of nature, people, creatures. So with particular attention to how contemporary ecological discourse in philosophy and art deals with these legacies. So, and to start this discussion, I would like to share with you some brief explanation of our cartographical platform, queerification.world, how we made it and what is it about. Queerification.world is a cartographical platform that is in constant development since 2018. This is how our lab started. Its initial purpose seeks to reflect the politics of non-human agents who live and evolve alongside the totalitarian order. And these politics, these creatures we would like to map, we are trying to map, to grasp on the map and to show them on the map. They are weeds, modified organisms, like geological phenomena whose fates are closely intertwined with the people who are in an equally feral state in Russia inhabiting these territories. So such creatures, which appeared mostly because of human activity, because of agrobiological experiments, for example. So now when USSR collapsed, they are capable of fighting back, and we investigate this phenomena in our artistic work. So these creatures are capable of wresting their own from a human being. And in general, queerification.world was conceived ambitiously to capture non-human politics, to find hidden connections and unusual alliances between feral beings and collide them with current human politics. Now we have following cartographic assemblages on our platform. First, it's Sosnovsky Hogweed and its tragic transformation into the green proletarian in the 1940s, so after the war, and then into an invasive species from the cultural species. So from the cultural plan, it transformed into invasive species, tragic result of the Soviet agrobiology, which now people call Stalin's revenge. We will discuss closely this species and the idea of green proletarian in the last part of our meeting. I think, well, within the discussion of feral automated system, because mostly this work is dedicated to this problem, the problem of hogweed in Russia. Another story, it's Berezniki, Perm Krai. We told this story in the form of Sadyria exhibition. We made this exhibition in collaboration with biologists and artists. We analyzed the local side effects of the execution of Stalin's great plan of the transformation of nature exactly in Perm Krai, and the concept of a city garden, working with ideas of Valentin Mindovsky, who actually was born and worked in Perm Krai. And Sadyria, in our view, generalizes the idea of such gardening and flowering ecology into the concept of sinkhology. We investigated sinkholes, how people coexist with this, which kind of ecologies appear in sinkholes. And the history of oil as assemblages also important for us. We considered the oil, like, of course, very important resource for Russia, as a revolutionary resource in early 20s. And we tried to answer the question why we cannot get rid of oil, why we so oiled on the brain, and how the oil was important for Lenin's revolution. And Lenin is also listed on our map, but we are still thinking about how to approach this topic. The basic idea of our future project develops the Kurokian mystification that Lenin is a mushroom, not a man. Indeed, one could joke that Lenin's body is the first work of bioart in Russia. And now on the website, we have presented all the existing Lenin monuments in the country, which are folded into united mycelium. So Lenin is a mushroom, and its monuments are creating a united mycelium across all country. We also have a world tab on our map. Yes, because we try to study similar transformations in other countries. I mean, similar atoms to transform nature, to operate nature in a technocratic management approach. So after all, it is known that the Stalin plan was quite characteristic for the 20th century. In different countries, we can find similar projects. And I mean, how people industrialized the environment and how they try to tame nature. For example, one of the projects we made in collaboration with Georgia Skartadou, it's a Greece artist, and she described and investigated coal mining industry in Greece and how this industry collapsed and which environmental problems it initiated. So if to try to answer the question, how do we work usually? So we collect information mainly from expeditions, how you can see. So this is our main method of work. So we use field work, we use citizen science, we grasp materials from expeditions, and then we turn them into publications, exhibitions, and workshops. And yeah, Nikita.
Yeah, I guess we will be going more deep into the issue of methodology, because as you can see, cartography is something which is really important for how our work is arranged, how exactly it performed from the methodological point of view. And I guess we will be discussing now exactly how we understand cartography and which exact role it plays in our platform. So cartography serves as a kind of a multi-dimensional approach concerning both methodology of thinking and artistic practice, but also it is aesthetics of how we see ecologies and which new ways of seeing these ecologies we can develop for the future. And to unlock cartography as that multi-layered, past-disciplinary methodology, we consider it from a wider perspective, with the practical implications which extend the dimension of epistemology. So cartography, as we interpret it, besides the ideology of seeing and drawing, also forms proper material relations with places. That is why cartography in our project is first and foremost utilized as material cartography. In other words, cartography not only designs unified pictures of territories and places that result in a simplified visual abstraction. What is more important, cartography rebuilds territories and landscapes through various sets of practices. The epistemological gaze of cartography provides us with a simplified and abstract worldview, and that implies simplified and abstract material practices that result in the replacement or even displacement of the previous place itself. So material cartography transforms territories by making them similar to the images on the maps. The ecological and ontological diversity of places is replaced by homogeneous objects with a simple utilitarian functions, that is water, gas, oil, pipelines, agricultural plantations, and cybernetic units. And it is worth mentioning that all of these objects are flesh and blood of the cartographic world. They are born inside the paper sheet of maps. And at the same time, they populate places and transform them far beyond the surface of the paper. That is why we find it important to underline that the materiality of cartography demonstrates to us that maps are first and foremost drawn on the territory itself, not on paper. And to reveal how exactly cartography might be transformed with this regard of material implication of cartography, we also need to discuss the main concept of our platform and our umbrella project federation.world. That is the concept of federation. So in the federation.world project, we investigate how the non-human ecological politics confront the violence of the human material cartography. It appears that to think about the non-human as opposed to the cartographic activity, we need to elaborate on the issue of a kind of non-human cartography. And to do so, we rely on the notion of federations, which is the key concept of our cartographical platform. It allows us to approach places, territories, and ecologies as assembled and unified, not by anthropomorphic practices and epistemologies, but by non-human or even post-human ecological mapping. Taking into account the biological understanding of ferality, we extend it through appeals to the terms Latin roots, beautifully expounded by Ovid in his Fasti. The Roman celebration of Feralia marks people's relation to the non-human, where non-human refers to otherworldly, for example, dead souls, which still have worldly impact and consequences, such as haunting and cursing. And extrapolating this semantic play, we understand federation and federations in multiple sense of the word as a places mapped by imperial totalitarian abstractions. And what is important, despite that mapping, federations have their own existence beyond the human scale. They map their own danger to the human order. This is why federations also mean federation with striking through death. Federation has its own identity and even politics. It acts as a kind of posthuman political ecological assemblage. And federation as a place formed independently, often in spite of human attempts at unification. And it is a particular politics that draws its own maps invisible from an abstract human perspective. But this politics, these federations, no less colonial or imperialistic in their intention toward the human species and the places which human occupy. For instance, Sosnovsky Hogwit is going to displace humans by invading their territories and actually spreading and self-seeding itself. And it is a big problem to make non-human cartographies visible, and no less important to elaborate on seeing the territory in a non-imperial decolonized way. This is why for us it is crucial to investigate the so-called savage or folk cartographical methodologies. The non-abstract and place-specific gaze of folk cartography, for example, pre-imperial drawings, mystic maps, etc. This gaze can make our vision sensitive to the complexity of the places themselves. And the human dimensionality of folk cartography, together with its fantasies and its fictions, steps beyond the limits of the human gaze only. And this non-human, or at least attempting to be not so human gaze, extending beyond human capacity, can be practically implemented with the help of digital platforms and new navigational tools. For example, today, OpenStreetMaps and Wikimap's already allow millions of people to collaboratively create alternative maps in opposition to the gaze of today's cartographic empires, such as Google Maps. And the platforms such as Mapbox, on which also we build our own platform, provide us with the freedom to design and structure. And we believe that contemporary technologies can reflect all this chimerical nature and multi-layeredness of the posthuman ecologies of destroyed, damaged, and transformed territories. So we are moving further, I guess.
Yes, And the last important part of our project, I suppose I won't say a lot of this part, but it's queer, and we elaborate on this concept, and it is very complicated for us because queer is mostly well, it coincides with liberal agenda, with gender studies, but queer and its understanding within the project context within the USSR is also interesting question. Beyond gender, I mean, beyond gender studies. So certainly Soviet environmental projects are seen in the context of brutal process of enslavement of nature. And we do not deny this, of course, but we notice that the communist understanding of what man and nature are has been destroyed by the constant shifting boundaries between man, plant, animal, machine. And sometimes in the early Soviet period, they used it to liberate men, liberate all material creatures. But in the 1930s, Stalin and later Stalin used this to humanize hogweed, for example, and to dehumanize political prisoners and to proclaim them as weeds. So they always shifting these boundaries, and these different groups of creatures united within USSR ideology and generalized in terms of collective farmers and proletarians. The proletarian here is a crucial concept for us because we consider it as someone more than human, someone beyond gender, beyond race, beyond a human. It's a true worker. Hogweed also could be worker. Sinkhole could be worker. Machine is also work, and they co-work, but their work unfolds within these Bogdanov's conjugation, as we consider it. So there is no sex in the USSR in the classical sense, because sex is possible only through labor and conjugation within all materials in general. And we also work on this concept, but for us it is also interesting to consider boundaries between human, animal, machines, because it's a very complicated question for the USSR and for the totalitarian regime, which usually used this division for own purposes, but here it's very complicated to speak about queer, and it's this understanding of proletarians and work. I think we will also be able to discuss today this question more closely. And to finish our long introduction, yes, and trying to go closely to texts. So there are only two parts we would like to share with you. It's a conceptual part of these texts, why we use them, and Stalin plan, and it's like a historical framework of these texts and our project.
Yeah. First, it is important to outline a conceptual framework of the text, and properly the text is following the question, what does it mean to construct the Union? And because the Soviet Union, regarding the plan for the transformation of nature, represent a sort of conceptual paradigm of philosophical unity in its specific materialist interpretation. And the background for such interpretation could be found in Alexander Bogdanov's technology, namely this interpretation of all processes in the universe as universal, as ontologically and practically united in their structure. And but however, following the ontological unity and symmetry of things in the universe, there are a kind of practical inconsistencies, disruptions, and asymmetries due to the actual state of the things. That's why communism is so important for them. And these inconsistencies and these like a kind of universal struggles can be related not only to the domain of human relationships, their social, political, and the ideological state, but also to the domain of biological laws and the so-called domain of nature in general. So, for instance, the individualistic the individualistic organic body is an example of such bourgeois state of the biological nature, which separates life into particular isolated entity, which we can also find these like statements in Bogdanov Technology, and also his practical work in the Institute for Blood Transfusion, and but also that interpretation of class struggle could be brought into a broader perspective related, for instance, to the terrestrial resources such as oil, where the communist agenda also interprets the inorganic earth in terms of class struggle. And this means that communism is not just a humanistic project of setting human nature free, as Marx formulated it, for example, but the whole ongoing project of separating and unifying nature as a whole. So through this, we can clarify that the meaning of nature transformation is not just historical landscape transformation projects, but also as a complex transformation of nature in different aspects and layers. And the USSR in this light is something that constructs its unity, its union. It is a project of unity of everything through the massive transformation of nature to mobilize all things as proletarians. However, this mobilization went into the depths of what we call queerification, the global processes of altering the vision and nature of biological and even inorganic entities to create a kind of common body with no borders and individuation. And this is conceptually based on the notion of conjugation, which has the obvious queer sexual connotations. And as soon as communist body of the posthuman proletarians was meant to serve a purpose of collective labor, that is, constitute a kind of reproductive relationship. So we can find in this a sort of implementation and theorization about how unity could be arranged, could be like performed through some sort of ideological and practical projects. We are entering into this domain of queerification, because to make the common body, you need to alter the way of connecting things. You need to actually alter our vision of how one thing can be related to other things. So I guess that's it.
And in the end, I would like to provide a small historical information very briefly concerning Stalin Plan. As you know, in October 1948, the Communist Party approved the Stalin Plan for the transformation of nature. And describing the main goal of the plan, one should mention the focus on creating an agricultural communist utopia that embraces expensive farms, enormous harvests, and brand new species of plants and animals. This is why we are working with monsters after such experiments. So in short, the plan represented a cruel fantasy about mechanized rivers. They called it white oil, Stalinized soils, and irrigated and protected steppes. It was the transformation of nature without any consideration of science, climate, topography, and soil features. It's mostly about sci-fi without science, and just the utopian approach to nature and to humans and their hybrids. And geography of this project embraced the European part of the USSR, the steppe region of South and Central Asia, plus Siberia. And I would like also to mention the fact which usually doesn't appear in the public space in Russia, absolutely, that Soviet geoengineering, Soviet ecological projects were based on the slave labor of Gulag prisoners. And it is information which never reaches people. Stalin's plan was initiated before 1948, of course. It has pre-war and pre-revolutionary roots. Pre-revolutionary attempts at the transformation of nature took into account science and were not so extensive, however, also cruel and expensive. The emerging but however, they coincide with the emergence of environmentalist tradition in Russia, especially Moscow Society for the Admirers of Nature, founded in 1805, the All Union Society for the Preservation of Nature, and projects initiated during pre-revolutionary Russia. Of course, they continued after the revolution, and the pre-war Stalin plan just continued it. Pre-war Stalin plan considered the creation of a new nature as a basis for socialist culture. And for me, it's very interesting how nature and culture abounded here. It's very modern, I suppose. So they're just considered it in a modern way, nature and culture. Undoubtedly, enslaving nature, the party officials used the rhetoric of liberation of nature from imperialism and the communization, collectivization of nature and its resources. For the meeting, we have chosen two texts that anticipate, embody, and continue the main conceptual ideas of the nature transformation plan, according to us. Of course, you can disagree with us. We have the excerpts from Bogdanov's ecology. They are, according to us, they are necessary to understand because we try to understand through them the conceptual roots of communization, collectivization, labor extended to non-human agents. And further, the second text is Lysenko's text. Here, according to us, we find a sort of a practical application of the Bogdanov conjugation idea, application this idea to living organisms, and we will see how it works from Lysenko's statements, such as trees are socialists, that the social environment is more important than the gene, and that only through communization can organism develop, but not privately, bourgeoisly, individually, and apart from everyone else. So, of course, we also refer to Lysenko because he represents one of the main phases of Stalin's plan. So, and we don't have it for discussion, like we did propose it for the discussion. However, in our text, you will find information about Glushkov and the designers of the Ogas project, it's Soviet internet. In our research, we offer to consider it as a last word in the utopian transformation of the world, of the Soviet world, which was discussed by both early Soviet sci-fi writers and engineers of the 1950s, 1960s. So hopefully in the following discussion, we will succeed in making the connections between these texts and ideas or not. So the discussion is open, and let's just try to share the idea.
Yeah, I guess before we start, it is also important to make a short notice about the translation, because one of the important terms which Bogdanov is using in his technology is conjugация, and this term is better to be translated as conjugation, but the translated of the English text chose conjunction. I don't know why he did that. Maybe because in 1977, the Anti-Oedipus was translated to English, and it was a kind of a mainstream of making conjunction, disjunction motto of conceptual work. But I mean, because it was the term which was expropriated from the domain of biology, it is important to keep this in mind, because, for example, when we are going to the, I don't know, for example, the dictionary of journal Nature, we here can find a definition of conjugation. I'm just would like to read it to clarify things. So as this dictionary states, conjugation is the process by which one bacterium transfers genetic material to another through direct contact. And during conjugation, one bacterium serves as the donor of the genetic material, and the other serves as the recipient. I guess it is like pretty short definition, but what is important here, we can find a sort of what Bogdanov did in the Institute for Blood Transfusion, because it is a kind of bacterial transfusion of genetic material, and this is why you can find a sort of similarities between like macro-organic level and a kind of micro-organic level. So I guess this is important to mention here. So we would like to start a discussion about our text, about the text which we suggested to for this context, broader context of nature transformation, but maybe you have some kind of commentaries on this.
Yeah, thank you so much. Just tuning in and saying something about the order of our discussion. So I guess we can start right off with going deep into Bogdanov, but also other questions. Yeah, and also applause for this first presentation. But I guess also other questions are welcome about the very foundations of your project, about your ideas on posthumanism and ecology, which is something I guess some of our network members are also interested in other contexts. And thanks for pointing out why you chose these texts and why what we might find interesting about them. But also, I guess it is possible to ask questions about your text, about your essay, just keeping in mind that the visual material will come after this. So, and I think it is okay if nobody objects, it is okay to record this because we're still like in this whole problem, and it will probably be good to have the questions as well and the discussion in this. Oops. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Andy says he can't hear me. Andy, is the audio okay for everyone? So why don't you just I think Anke was first, and then we'll have Mika. Why don't we just start with the discussion?
I had a couple of questions, but first, thank you for this lovely and wonderful and wide-ranging presentation. My first question, of course, was about post-Soviet. Isn't that gone since 2 years? So, you know, we are not living in post-Soviet times anymore, you know, and anything relating the territories of the Russian Federation and whatever was post-Soviet beyond it is not post-Soviet anymore. So that's a factual question of, you know, where you situate yourself in space and time. Another question was about the politics of the ecological project. So a big part of your project was about cartographing oil. I was wondering why you didn't consider any of the research about petrostates that's going on since 50 years and, you know, has a clear view on how this material substance, which is oil, relates to questions of modernity, questions of political structure, questions of how to include or not to include populations into their politics, you know, because there is basically anybody working in the oil industry, so very little people work there, so there are no workers, you know. You were talking about the proletarian. There are not very many proletarians in oil industry, you know. It's you know, it's not even capitalist, it's pre-capitalist. It's a very close connection between just material and and profit, which, you know, leaps over so many steps of industrial, societal, and political development, that I was asking myself, you know, how that is really fruitful without, you know, doing all those steps. And then I had a question in relation to language and the use of metaphor, you know. For instance, Lenin as a mushroom. You know, I guess you know the critique of Arkhangelsky, of this position as a social analysis in Russia, and his claim that such metaphor is part of the problem of Russian culture, especially in the past 2 years. You know, so how metaphor and the creation of a mythology go hand in hand. So basically those three: politics, time, and language.
Okay. Yeah, I guess we will be like, because all these questions are connected, I guess we will be answering in a kind of this whole story. And first, I guess, considering the term post-Soviet, it is not Soviet which we were really interested about in this term, but post itself, this prefix, because actually it is also what we are interested in the term of post-human, because we are like elaborating on this idea that legacy is mostly something which relates to the ecology and the material memory of living rather than a kind of ideological consequences. That is why when we are referring to the post-Soviet, we are referring to a kind of situated and located material legacies and ecological consequences, which are far more like have more survivability than the ideology itself. That's why, for example, Sosnovsky-Hogwit, it is a kind of post-Soviet ecology. It is nothing. It is deeply related to the Soviet agrobiological politics, to this ideology, and to the engineering projects which were developed during this para-scientific practice. And still, this ecology is really survivable. It is really strong in its attempt to live through the Soviet world in different kind of sense, because the Sosnovsky-Hogwit and its invasion is far more wide than the territory of Russia. There is like a lot of different places which are the territories of invasion of Sosnovsky-Hogwit. And this is how we understand post-Soviet and the post itself, this like a kind of legacy, kind of inheritance. What you also mentioned the issue of oil. Of course, we were like really elaborating this question of petropolitics and carbon democracy, and we were really well aware about, for example, the work of Timothy Mitchell about how exactly the oil forms a basis for this concentration of space and time to make modern city possible. But we were going further and elaborating the oil as a kind of, which we were calling, by following this term from the news, oil on the brain, this idea of the obsession with the interpretation, everything through the oil. What is like the cause of this conflict? Oil, of course. And this like motto of ideology and politics to express and to explain everything through a kind of geopolitical transformation. And we were like going into these roots of why exactly we are so oiled in our brain, why actually petropolitics is not only the thing which forms, I don't know, the structure of our states, our cities, etc., but also why exactly our narrations, for example, the so-called meta-narration and big narratives, are something which is really similar to how oil works, because meta-narratives is something which is like really condensed, which is really it's trying to implement different stories into one single narration about, for example, the human or the history, whatever. And yeah, oil for us was going far beyond just I don't know, the oil and its importance in Russian ideology or Soviet ideology. It is something which we were treating in a kind of universal scale, because it is also what consider the way of our thinking, because we are a kind of not only a carbon form of living, but we are also a kind of carbon form of thinking. This is what a kind of problematic when we are trying to going beyond oil, because it's not only a process of like changing our economy, but also changing our thinking. So that this is my thoughts on that. Maybe Ekaterina will continue answering you.
Yeah, Anke, thank you for the questions. They are always very, very precise. Yes, I don't know. Of course, our situation is very complicated. We didn't make any statements that like did some Russian contemporary artists. So, okay, now we suspend. So sorry what we did previously. Sorry that we used different terms and bad terms. Now we just renew everything and so on and so on. So we made the projects in 2018 and before the war. No, we I think that from the beginning we used word Soviet and post-Soviet because we are afraid of this word. We were afraid of it. We weren't thinking ourselves like post-Soviet children, no, and but we are, because we are living and we were raised in the within abandoned Russia, within abandoned territories, within Stroika, perestroika, and so on. So it was like our part of our legacy. And of course, we would like to share European and American values, and we would like to play video games. But after that, we live in very fucked up, I'm sorry, ecological environment. And this post-Soviet is mostly like about ourselves, about our homes. And maybe when we're speaking, well, and our project is concentrated in Russia mostly. And we thought to start projects on not Russian post-Soviet territories, but we didn't this because we didn't know how to approach it. Because of course we feel that it's something different, that it's not a post-Soviet in Russian understanding of this term. So yes, and I think it's it's mostly personal to use this term. And of course, it's a lot of work to rethink it. Because for now, when we were visiting these places, I mean, territories, these farms, these, I don't know, abandoned territories and territories after different ecological disasters in Russia, which of course, not only Chernobyl, and Chernobyl is a small part of it, but of course, it's a huge part. But it's well known. But
because it is in Ukraine.
Yeah. And but so yeah, we didn't invent another term, but we tried to use this play on death and life using term feral federation, because it coincides and sounds like federation, so we tried to play with it. So federation, I don't know. I don't know what to say about oil. I remember that this project was mostly about how it started in Russia. It's like historical perspective of oil industry and whether we can stop using oil, and in the end of our investigation we decided that no, of course. Even if we tried to invent with participants of a workshop different well, alternative energy, but of course it's impossible in current situation and in previous, even in 2018. And I don't remember the last question. It was about
language. Your movement between metaphor and, and mythology, you know, massively avoiding any sort of factual language, referential language.
For us, Lenin is a mushroom. It's not a metaphor. Not a metaphor. It's not a metaphor because it's so really mushroom. It's really.
So you want to say Russia lives in an animist society?
No, I could say that it's within. Well, actually, Lenin has its own lab. I mean, Lenin's body has a huge laboratory that researches his tissues, how to maintain it, and so on. So it no more even corp. It's something.
Yes, and then we should talk of him in the plural because there's not only one Lenin, but at least, you know, 4 corpses.
Yeah, this is a kind of biota.
But they are not mushrooms.
Yeah, but there is something deeply right about this notion that Lenin is a mushroom. Maybe not in like strict formal language, but still when we are thinking about what has become of Lenin, and that we have a kind of biotic assemblance of different microorganisms which are like really conserved, preserved, and investigated deeply in these laboratories. And also we have this huge network of Lenin monuments in Russia, which are like these monuments like in almost every city in Russia. And this is a kind of mushroom mycelium thinking of what Lenin is in the communist agenda, because what is more important is that you need to make not only like conceptual or historical references to Lenin, but to make like material references, that each place should be like always referencing to the Lenin's monument. Because when, for example, you are sometimes when you are asking old people how to orient in some small town, they are always relating that this place is located from the left side of Lenin's monument, or you need to go farther for 15 minutes from the Lenin's monument. And this is how this mushrooms thinking is working, actually, that because Lenin is a kind of mushroom of communism in general, in different ways of this, and also in biological terms.
So you do not consider it a metaphor, you consider it a mythology, and you endorse this mythology.
I think that it is very important to consider Lenin as a mushroom, because Russian politics and Russian politicians never accept this idea. And when you say Lenin is a mushroom, it means that it is just a creature. It's not a myth. It's just a creature. It's for corpse. It's absolutely stupid idea to maintain it works. Using laboratories and spending money for it. So Lenin as a mushroom should be buried. So this is the idea.
Yeah, actually,
until now nobody knows how he survived. You know, the fact that the mausoleum burned down in 1927, you know, so whatever left of him after 1927.
Yeah, what Andy is referencing to Alexei Yurchak, and yeah, there is a lot of writings on developing this issue. I mean, also Boris Groys and his interpretation of mausoleum, and of course there is like from the old school, if I may say so, old school thinkers like Yurchak or Groys or different other scholars from which are related to the Soviet and post-Soviet issues. They are also were really interested in elaborating on this like queer phenomena of Lenin, and there is a lot of like articles which are also like suggesting to think about Lenin as not a simple ideological agenda or simple ideological reference of any bureaucratic of Soviet bureaucratic management. There is a lot more like material in this figure.
So it's interesting what this discussion has turned into, because we have now a couple of links to publications on things you have mentioned in the chat, something which our viewers that are not present here in this meeting will not be able to see. But there has been some work on Lenin as a mushroom, and also we can I guess we have about 20 minutes for this discussion, also including discussions of Bogdanov and Lysenko. So maybe we should collect a couple of questions, and so everyone will have a chance to ask theirs, because unfortunately Mika already had to leave, and she also left a note on a publication on Bogdanov. Maybe it's interesting for you to read. Next question from Clemens.
Yeah, thank you very much for this fascinating paper and also the very interesting material you shared with us. I got a ton of inspiration from sci-fi novels from the 20s I've never read of and would love to delve into. I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on the use of the concepts of connection in your paper, because I found it was on the one hand used as kind of an analytical tool, just describing systemic processes, but on the other hand, I also had the impression that there was kind of a normative pledge for connecting disconnected or not yet connected items. And I was just wondering how we can reflect upon this use of connection in an ecological context, because connection is not an innocent and purely positive phenomenon. Think about the colonial elements we already talked upon. So why should it be possible or positive to connect, to imperial connect the center and the periphery with all the problems we have from that? But also, why should it be positive to connect yet untouched by human landscapes with new technology, with machines, humans, histories, machines? So I was just wondering, I was a little bit irritated by this positive use of connection and the lack of, I would say, criticism that hyperconnection has also found in our times, not only from an ecological but also from a sociological perspective recently. I was just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on the use of that concept in your research.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. Yes, I guess this is like the right suggestion about that. What is really obsessed about making as many connections as possible is really a kind of totalitarian ideology, and this is like what is going to be like separate from this kind of paradigm of connection is something which is mostly in opposition to totalitarianism. That is why, for example, in contemporary Russia, this totalitarian regime is so obsessed with the idea of multiculturality, of plurality, etc., of perspectives and nationalities, etc., because it's like really in the vein of the totalitarian regimes. But what I would like to mention, if you're like, if we are talking about not like the issue of conjunction, but when we are talking about our interpretation of connections, we're referring to the notion of the so-called unstable connections, because our project, like our last project, was called like that, and we were like elaborating of the idea that like internet thinking and a kind of hyper connection is not the way of how we can develop like in times of crisis, in times of catastrophes. And that is why it is important to elaborate on kind of different ways and different models of how this connection could be installed, because we're not talking about successful and stable and I don't know, other forms of connections which are, for example, so popular when we are thinking about internet, artificial intelligence, or many other forms of the internet, like contemporary digital internet world. That's why we were thinking about more unintelligent, more slow, more unstable ways of making connections. And that is why in our project we were also like collaborating with a lab in Bristol, UK, which is developing now this paradigm of unconventional computing. Because unconventional computing is not about successful and fast connection. It is not about this 100% making connections and translations and other transactions of information. This is more about understanding of how different agents could possibly operate like a calculating machine, and that, like in theory, everything could be operating like that. And this is our way how we can understand like a kind of living together, not as a kind of expropriation or I don't know, violent connection to something other, but rather on this like unstable and like interchanging and distributed way of management, operation, and control. That is why we were also developing this idea of automated network, because to do your network fully automated, you need to deprive it of anything which controls it. This is the full idea of automation, because if someone is in control of the system, this is not an automation. This is just a kind of surrogate understanding of that. And in general, to do so, you need to like delegate the activity and like calculation and operation in the system to something which is not really predictable or controllable. You need to, for example, we were trying to use random electrochemical processes inside plant leaf. And this is the way how we can elaborate on automation and to make this non-violent and non-imperial understanding of networks, of connections, of systems. I guess this is the way how I see it.
Yes, Clemens, if I got you right, I got your question right. If I understood it right, you are talking about your impression from the text we used, from our interpretation of this text. So you're mostly talking about that we are using conjugation in a very positive way, because we were describing our grandma, how she raised tomatoes, however, for us, it's not, well, actually, I surprised because maybe like we are within context, yeah, we inside this context, and maybe we don't get some things, we don't understand it, because for us it's totally critical thing, because we are talking about conjugation when you dehumanize humans and humanize non-humans, and it's a horrible thing. and it's the basis of the understanding how nature should work, how horticulture should work in the USSR, and how the work should be organized in the USSR, how kolkhoznik should work, how proletarians should exist, and so on. So we try to provide this monstrosity of such a conjugation. So this is horrible thing when and we discussed the problem of love in USSR and sex in USSR, that it's impossible in a natural way. Actually, it is possible in a way of conjugation, when you conjugate with other mechanism, with non-human creatures, and you love tomatoes, for example, but you don't like people. We try to raise this problem, which is still with us, which is still with our family and in our culture. So it's still a huge problem. Do not understand. Well, this dehumanization is a part of understanding the human society, because we try to raise the question that the society in the USSR and current totalitarian society in Russia are basing on this question of conjugation, on this question of on this problem, how through these different connections, of course they could be very productive, but we built something bad, something well, we try to consider the problem from this way, that the borders are very important, of course. The borders from the start, the borders between human and animal can be shifted, can be blurred totally. Of course, we are speaking about communism we can speak about communism from the point of view of immunology, but we also wrote that communism from the immunological perspective just destroys immunology of every creature. It produces monsters. So maybe we did not emphasize our idea in a strong way. But talking about, well, the problem is also big. It is also a big problem, and I would like to raise it now because when you study Soviet ecological projects, when you study these communist ideas, especially early communist idea, of course, they very, very romantic, and they are. Well, sometimes you can consider them like, I don't know, Donna Haraway's approaches sometimes, because what in Soviet times people did with insects, I mean, something good. They raised insects. They use them for forestry in a good way, and so on. However, the huge problem is that beyond these good projects, these not only catastrophic ones, but these good ideas and ideas of conjugation also, we see how totalitarianism just transforms this idea to imprison people, to enslave people. And the main question is how it works, how nature and natural thinking is working within totalitarian society. So, of course, it could be good. I mean, there are good ecological ideas like insect breeding, like some forestry projects, horticultural projects, and this idea that we should share our humanity with non-humans, like in a way that, like, we co-workers, we partners, yeah, we companion species, but it could be dangerous in such a in an unstable situation like USSR or contemporary Russia. And
can I just ask you if you want to have more questions in this section, because in this section we only have 5 minutes left according to our schedule. And if you like to have questions, we should shorten both the questions and the answers, because yeah, it's just a bit tight otherwise. And if I get it right, Andy had a question, but he just wrote it in the chat. Would you like to voice it for us again, or?
Yeah, I can. Wait, sorry, am I?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm there now. Yeah, I'm just. I mean, this is a fascinating project and fascinating text, and I mean, pairing technology with Lysenko, I think, is really interesting. I am curious on. So I'm a historian, so I'm very actually curious about the actual influence. Like, I assume that Lysenko read Red Star, but I kind of bet he didn't encounter technology at any point. So I'd actually be curious if there was an actual reading of that. But then the larger question that I put in the chat was about there's this notion in your project about Soviet totalitarianism producing these monstrosities, these post-human monstrosities. And I mean, so much of the post-humanist literature, from Latour to Haraway to all of these things, emphasize a much more common, I say modernity in the question there, but a much more common, like broad way that modern contemporary societies have produced these types of hybrids that have these negative ecological effects. I mean, at one point, it sounded like one of the things was like, oh, well, ecology in the West is good and ecology in the East is bad, which is not true. I mean, I think it's just a kind of is how I would put it very bluntly. Like we live in a global situation of degraded ecologies that I believe that the environmental humanities is supposed to be reflecting upon. So, I mean, another way to put that is like, how is it best to get at the exceptional in the Soviet situation? How is it best to get at these things that are different while also not losing sight of the things that Soviet modernity shares in common with other types of modernities, with other types of degraded ecologies, with other types of trajectories in the modern world? That's not the most precise way to put it, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. Actually, that is why our project is called ferations.world, because the processes of ferality, the processes of making these feral ecological political assemblages is not unique for the Soviet Union. I mean, this is what we can rather learn, because in the Soviet Union, these creatures were produced in kind of a massive amount. And this is, we can like count them. I mean, Sosnovsky Hogwit is the most radical and the most impressive and of course negative way creation of such ideology. And of course, this like project is not supposed to like stand for this, I don't know, specificality, because it concerns everyone, but it would be a kind of hypocrisy to speak like in a universal way, I mean, in terms of research, because it is also important when you are dealing with totalitarianism, when you are dealing with unifying universalist politics, which are going to comprehend and to explain what like in the universal terms. When you are reading Bogdanov's, it is the project which relates no less than to the universe itself, that the whole universe is like involved into the communist and the capitalist processes. That's why we need to free the nature from itself. We need to tell nature what it is going to look like, what it is going to be. This is our project. We need to like to breed nature. This is like a term from Lysenko, from other ideologists. We need to like to educate nature how to be communist. This is like the main point. This is why, and it is so ambitious. You are speaking not only about like, I don't know, people of different countries. You relate to them that they should become communists. You're relating to, I don't know, physical particles, to animals, to plants, that they have to become communist. This is so crazy. This is so mad and so, I don't know, ambitious universalist politics. And that's why this situatedness and locality is so important when we are speaking about like actual research, citizen science, artistic activity, etc., etc., etc. It have to be located somewhere, to not to be this kind of mad unification, universalization. But what is also important that we also can find a unique sides of this communist modernity. For example, this process of queerification, which we are suggesting how it is better to translate the Shklovsky term "остранение," because actually queerification is the process which is deeply involved in this project of educating nature, of making nature communist, because in order to construct the whole body of communism, in order to make the whole universe act like super productive, super harmonious communist being, you need to alter the whole nature of species, of inorganic matter, etc., etc. You need to find how to change the nature of everything. And this is like a global queerification which destructs boundaries, which destructs immunity. And of course, this is, I guess, this is a kind of unique phenomenon, because this is the processes which concern the people of the USSR, which concerned a lot of ecological, I don't know, ecotopes of the USSR. We can see the consequences, and these consequences still are not treated well. I mean, there is no way how the hogweed could be, I don't know, how we can live together with hogweed today, because this is mostly kind of another war, which is Russian Russian government is launching against not only humans but also some species, and they are like interpreting this relationship to the hogweed in the military terms. This is like that we need to fight, we need to destroy, we need to, I don't know, we need to return our territories back. This is the same rhetoric. If you can actually compare them, you see that this is a kind of militarization against nature also, as well as humans.
Thank you. I only would like to briefly add, yeah, it's an interesting question concerning monsters and this posthumanist theory. And of course, well, I don't know if you're familiar with the problem, but in Russia, these ideas were just applied without rethinking, without like reworking it through the Russian prism, through the Russian history and USSR history of the USSR. So you cannot apply, I'm sorry, but you cannot apply Donna Haraway's idea to current situation, I mean, ecological situation in Russia, because it doesn't work, because monsters which were produced during the USSR period is a kind of different monster, because Haraway writes about monsters from the countries where people have human rights. But we are talking about monster where there are no some institution or some idea or such idea as human rights. It's only on the paper, and this is the problem. And it was like from the beginning of the USSR and in contemporary Russia, like that it bears this legacy, so it continues this legacy, and this is the problem on the ideological.
Andy, can you mute your audio? Thank you.
Yeah, so of course it could be controversial, of course, but yes, we're familiar with all these critical ideas from posthumanism, but it should be rethought within Russian situation. So yeah.
Can I just say something according these lines? This is that I found that's really true about most of Western post-humanist literature, that it departs from an idea of ideology that comes from Western societies, and when you take ideology as something from the Soviet experience, the picture looks entirely different. And also, yeah, so I'm still the chair of this discussion, so I just wanted to mention that we're a bit overdue. And I wanted to ask the group if there are any other questions, because I also have one, and I would like to ask it before we get to the next part of this event. So I don't, while I'm not seeing any hands, I will just try to word my to say some first one comment and one little question. So what I found very exciting is that you take Bogdanov, Lysenko and Glushkov, like the early Soviet, the high Soviet, and the late Soviet period, and then you try to do post-Soviet theory, and this is really exciting because you have to overcome so many contradictions, and I guess it is quite challenging, but also very fascinating how you do it. The one comment I had was whether the post-human paradigm still applies, maybe in a similar way to Anke's question. Are we still in the post-Soviet paradigm, or the omnipresent observation that the post-historic epoch is over since 2022? I was also wondering because I was wondering, does it still make sense to think about post-human things at all when humans have taken over so much agency and importance again, with the idea of the Anthropocene, of the Anthropos as the cause of all this conundrum. And I was wondering what you mean by post-human. Maybe that's a question too large for all this, but I've been wondering whether the old post-humanist literature from the noughties and the 2010s are really still applies to our current situation, and this is what the discussion is also about, not only about these texts, but 2023 ecological thought in 2023. So maybe if you could say something about this shortly.
I have a text, but it's in Russian, where I tried to solve this problem, because I also consider it like a problem, because we cannot use this term, but actually the term posthuman is complicated and controversial, and some researchers try to say that okay, it's only for transhumanists, or no, Braidotti says okay, we save this term from transhumanists, it will be for posthumanists, and so on. So it doesn't work when we speak about USSR and Russian ecologies. Well, and I tried to bound this term with the understanding of posthumous, like the term posthumous. Posthuman for us is it's mostly like posthumous thinking. It's a question about legacy. It's mostly about how rework your haunted legacy, your monstrous legacy, and maybe, of course, this approach can be applied to other projects, not only our project. But yes, we do not consider posthumanism and posthuman like something in a classical way, maybe, but we consider it like sharing post-mortem situation. I mean, post-mortem status of creatures and people who are living on abandoned territories. And well, maybe somehow the work by French filmmaker Naïma Piret, I can share this work with you. It's there's a film about Berezniki. It's about how people are co-living with sinkholes. And actually, this is the explanation of our understanding the post-human within the discourse of Russian ecologies and post-Soviet ecologies, how we understand it. So it's a totally feral post-human situation shared by humans and non-humans, and it's not about like symbiosis. It's mostly like dark symbiosis, mostly like you cannot abandon this place, you forced to live there, it's your home, and how you deal with it. So I can share the link, because now I'm not able, I think, to explain these ideas because it's really complicated. But I would say that I refer there to in the text to the seminars, the Derridian seminars on Maurice Blanchot, when he writes about his death, and when he is contemplating on philosophy, on thinking, how it works. And the thinking is always post-mortem, and it is also always posthumous, and posthuman, it's like, well, the concept we are trying to develop in our work. So,
yeah.
So I'm not sure what we should finish on time, so that's why I'm asking, should we continue with the next part, because there will be more questions after this, and we will need some time for them too. So we're very excited about the contemporary positions. Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, but we actually can move smoothly. I mean, because these issues of post-human and like relations to the post-war Russia, I mean, Russia in the situation of the war it launched. I mean, this is also the things that make this area, this like the notion of posthuman really complicated in terms of the still continuing importance of thinking about ecology, but the problem of how we can find the right like instrument and the right methodology for thinking about it, because like we knew previously before the war that it is impossible to like apply, I don't know, like just universalized critical, I don't know, critical theory, critical post-human theory to this issue of post-Soviet world and to post-Soviet Russia. But now, especially when in Russian contemporary art, this issue of ecology and posthumanism are used for a kind of escapist or I don't know, a kind of hiding the real problems through this prism of ecology. It is going to be especially more complicated than before. But still, because war considers not only the destruction of people's life, but also a kind of ecological terror, it is also important to still thinking about this ecological understanding of what a kind of totalitarianism is. So I guess this is, which is also like invites us to the domain of art and understanding what is like, I don't know, the right medium of discussing that.
Yeah, so let's start with Alina Brovina. I think you, Nikita, will introduce her work. So yeah, well, generally speaking, we tried to grasp projects of two types. Of course, it's only like strictly general. So some of them and most of them are critical, according to the USSR discourse and USSR ecology. And the only one, I guess, we found, which is controversial, so which is continuing the Soviet environmental thinking and good agricultural tradition. But we start with the critical ones, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like, and also most of the work we cited and like interpreted them in our text. Yeah, so I guess we just like will try to visually extend this discussion about the issue of queerification and like Soviet transformation of nature. And this, like, it's not like the single artwork, it is more like a series of artworks, and it is called Virgin Lands, which is a way how the artist Alina Brovina is translating the Russian word "целина." So this is a term which was like widely used in the agricultural agenda of the post-war Soviet Union. And
I'm sorry, and it was a Khrushchev project, Virgin Lands, after.
Yeah, but not Virgin Lands, but I guess the so-called освоение целины, and like the development of Virgin Lands. And these projects, with using this like medium of cartography, as you can see, because it's like actual territories which were like transformed during this agricultural transformational project of developing virgin lands. And it is also using this like color schematics, which refers to the understanding of Earth through the patriarchal lens of passive woman's body. I mean, because actual relation of communism to the communists to the Earth was like it is like a virgin potential space open for colonization, for transforming it in many different ways, because it's like a passive matter. And it is also interesting that it is related somehow to this notion of Platonian hora, where matter itself is also really understood through this passive matrix of possibilities, which could be like serve as a source for the transformation. And here we can see that this like queerification like transforms into something really related to the patriarchal world, not only like queerification to alter the nature of species. Here we can see that the agenda of queerifications brought out something like really treated in terms of violence, in terms of penetration and other like patriarchal man-gazed symbolism. So I guess that's.
But also, I remember that Alina refers to her personal story.
Yeah, definitely.
Her grandfather worked on virgin lands. He was not a farmer, but was
he was a guy who took a part in the ideological projects. I mean, because he was a scientist, and he developed from specific region in Russia, he developed a program of how we can transform the soil by bringing like a lot of techniques, a lot of agricultural specialists to transform like these waste and potentialities of soil into something which could bring to the Soviet people like a fruitful products of their labor.
Yeah, but I also remember that Alina refers to the question of love and seeding, because she describes how she and how her grandmother and she seeding some plants in a garden, and she describes it like a valiant process, like rape. And so yeah, this is also about conjugation in a negative way.
This is definitely a kind of violent conjugation, but it is, I guess, it is something which is also a little bit common, because everyone in Russia has a kind of, not farm, but it is called dacha. This is a place where you can like self-seed anything you want. It is not a big space, but it was like distributed to almost anyone in the Soviet Union, and it was kept by almost anyone also after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And it is a procedure through which like everyone is passes, and it is also really commonly associated with this idea of like violent actions against soil, which also a kind of remnants of this interpretation of soil as something passive and full of and open for any kind of penetration, I guess.
Yeah, continuing this review, I would like to mention Anastasia Tsarder. We are writing about her. And her project, from our point of view, is close to Mindovsky horticultural theory. Valentin Mindovsky from Permkrai, his cross-species embodiment, his cross-specimen theory about planting the plants, and plants like an embodiment of socialism and communist love. So the project Arcadia, it's a series of photography took in different places from former Soviet territories, from former Soviet cities, and through these photographies, Anastasia tries to tell us a story. So what happened when Soviet Union collapsed? So in the pictures, there is no human being, and we see only greenery, the feral flora that overgrown the buildings, and so this flora is imposing different order. And what was left after the communist parties, communist ideas, communist gardens of paradise. So it's just out of control vegetation, ruderal flora that consumed the human infrastructure and turned it into a post-apocalyptic landscape. So we consider this activity presented on this photography. I mean, when we speak about plants here in this project, it is important to us to mention the concept of vegetal sexuality, which could be also very aggressive, because we know that vegetation is open to making sex with every world. It's absolutely communist from this perspective. And Mindovsky wrote about flora that it can help party to teach people communism and true love. And so here these pictures try to like depict somehow this idea of vegetal communism, we should say. And another project, if we just briefly speaking, it's actually it touches upon the question of hybridity and hybridization in the USSR, grafting in the USSR, Victoria Chupahina, she is like Anastasia, is based in Moscow. She is there now. And I suppose Alina also in Moscow.
I suppose so, I guess.
Mostly, yeah. And so here, this artistic project is dedicated to a question of woman as a shapeshifter, woman as a werewolf, a fluid creature, unstable substance. But Victoria tries to use this image like how to say, to overcome the totalitarian ideas, to to resist it. So to become a wolf, to become an animal, to resist the political totalitarian approach to the human and understanding the human. So yes, it's her video work, last video work, Blind Man, or Hide and Seek, she also calls it. It's a game with a dog, and it's a service dog, as you can see. This dog, this type of breed used by policemen in Russia, it's very common breed for policemen in Russia. So, and this is also like an attempt to fight and to play with, and to play hide and seek with a policeman, to play hide and seek with war, maybe. So but we discuss this project in our text within the question of hybridization and monstrosity. And of course, from general point of view, Victoria uses a very classical turn. She uses the woman body and its ability to turn into something. Like a figure of opposition, a figure of resistance. So it's like a classical way of understanding human-animal relations within feminist perspective, I should say.
I guess, like, by finishing speaking about the project we cited, and also which related to the notion of critics of the Soviet and like contemporary queerification, I guess we need to speak about our project. Yeah, it's like really hard to do because it was really a hybrid project. It was like multiple, and it actually it was more than 30 participants which were a part of it. And in general, this project was dedicated to the practical investigation of the systems of automated planning and management that existed in the Soviet Union, as to this, especially the so-called OGAS, or the all-state automated system. We would like to like understand this ideological attempt to upgrade the system of planning and community management, because like the inventor and designer of OGAS, Glushkov, was really obsessed with the idea of upgrading the 5-year-old plans and the whole general system of planning in the Soviet Union by integrating the computational machines and different forms of automated control into it. And the basic idea was that computer centers have to simplify and automate the processes of gathering data and controlling the processes of micro and macro management in the state's economy. But in its radical interpretation, when we are trying to read like Glushkov's idea radically and even literally, I suggest OGAS meant to replace all the apparatus of human bureaucratic management and let machines to do all the work. So the idea of OGAS was to replace the the human communist government in order to let machines to do the work and to eradicate this huge bureaucratic machine of paper-based management, which was really widespread especially in the late Soviet Union. I mean, because everything was bureaucracy. And we investigated this critical impulse of August to put an automated agent into the system. For Glushkov, it was machines, but we were going to radicalize this attempt and to free the system from any sort of control. And to do this, as I said previously about that, we used an unconventional computing system of calculations, which was based on the model of biochemical processes inside the plant leaf. And for modeling this, we used Sosnovsky-Hogwit leaf in order also to find a way of cooperating with these toxic species, because actually there is still no understanding of how we can overcome this interpretation of violence against this species. And our understanding was that we could actually use it as a computing manager in our system and to let it serve a kind of peaceful purpose, to overcome toxicity, because the hogweed is really toxic in terms of when you are trying to conjugate with Sosnovsky hogweed, you're quite possibly can harm yourself by extreme heat, which is resulted by the solar sensitive agents inside its juice. So I guess that was our attempt to this. And so the main feature of this relying on the unconventional computing is that the processes inside leaf are not predictable, and they are really closely random. So this vision allowed us to model a system with no individualized or personified control, and this is how we can attempt to understand and to model the system which exists without totalitarian paradigm. So I will stop this. I guess maybe when we can find a time to discuss, which we presented. I mean,
yeah, but I would like just add 2 more projects.
Okay.
Yeah, because I would like to continue our presentation with pioneers of the ecological topic in Russia. So you should know this group. It's Urban Fauna Lab, of course. And I really love their project Outer Green. It's mixed media installation in Pavilion Zerno, the grain. The works from 2014. Actually, they were first who tried to rethink the feral species. They worked with hogweed too, and imagine Pavilion Zerno, Pavilion Grain, at Vedenha, like a very huge pavilion when people in 30s, 40s, they play their super cultural plants that breed super harvests and so on and so on. So, and there Urban Fauna Lab put wheat, put hogweed, for example, which is invasive species now. And I interpret this project actually within this idea of dehumanization of human and humanization of the non-human, and the consequences of this of the Stalinist idea of humanization the non-human. So, and they have a really good and beautiful book, Valley of Beggars. I highly recommend this book. It also contains the interview with Michael Marder concerning plants. But of course, well, some ideas in this book and in Urban Fauna Lab, I think, should be rethink during the current situation, current political situation, because you also could recognize some non-critical approach to Soviet legacy. But well, book is beautiful, and the project is really beautiful. And in the end, I would like to mention Ilya Dolgov, Russian artist, who is currently, I don't know where is he, but out of Russia, I suppose, escaped the war. He is interesting because for me, he has a special position in this ecological Russian art, I should say, because in 2013 he started with the project Forest Journal, What is Nature, but actually this is about, it's reenactment, sort of reenactment of Vitaly Bianchi, the forest newspaper, and in Russian, the project calls Lesnaya Gazeta, the forest newspaper, and it continues the Soviet tradition of understanding of nature, describing of nature. So it's very poetic project. However, as you can see, when war started, the Ilya put here on his on the website of his project, the statement that some previous ideas, I mean, some ideas should be rethought in the current situation. And but it also could be interesting for you. It has Russian edition and English edition. And his last project, well, why I'm talking about Ilya, he is a winner of Andrei Bely Prize in Russia. So mostly this prize is mostly given to writers, and it is also very, very interesting how philosopher artist transform into writer. And in current situation, but his project is also interesting. It's Steaponics. He tries to find a way how to speak about how he put it, shadow culture, shadow work. Steaponic, it's an artistic philosophical project about vegetal beings, about vegetation, about raising plants, about co-living with plants, but and yes, the main theory he used in his project is permaculture theory and Le Guin approach to nature and sci-fi. But I should say that, and he states it that in Steaponics he doesn't touch like political questions. His project doesn't aim to change something, anything, to rethink something. It's only about like co-living, like a foam being, to be foam being, like a plant. So living like a plant. I consider it like living like a plant. But it is also like worth to mention because it's the latest project which was nominated and which was like successful in this nomination. I mean, Andrei Bely Prize. And this is also talk a lot about ecology in Russia and ecological topic in current Russia, and how contemporary artists work with it.
I guess it is a time to move like in the realm of discussing, I mean, this project or like this project in relation to the conceptions we previously mentioned and discussed, because they are really intersected in many ways. That's why we are like invite you to comment or to, I don't know, to make a critical points on this, to discuss it, whatever.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much for this valuable for this precious information. I think there's so much to learn about contemporary artists working in on ecological questions that whom we just haven't heard about yet, and it's so fascinating what you've unearthed and what people also connect with your own work. If there is no question from the others immediately, I will ask one. Because I was not it's actually not one about the presentation. It's but the presentation was very good as an illustration of your text, because now everything makes sense. all the pictures are there for the text. And I guess
and
now
sorry, I just was going to say that in the final edition of the text, of course, they will be inside the text. That's why.
Yeah, so you're still in the process of writing this text. So this is also a way for you to discuss the main questions, right? So probably it's not a bad idea to ask a question about the very concept. And I was, of course, from the first moment, I was interested in the way you were making art with Lysenko, because tvorческий Darwinism is something that asks to be made into art, but it is so it might be so controversial to do that because it's not science but pseudoscience, and there have been written so many nasty things about Lysenko, and there have happened so many nasty things with this theory that there is always a macabre side to doing this, but this is all the more fascinating then. And my question was about queerness. So in your text, you introduce this very appealing, very wide idea of queerness, which is not the standard encyclopedia definition of queerness coming from gender studies, but a very wide term. So it is so wide that it also gives room to Lysenko. So all the creative methods of Lysenko can also be queer in your view, if I get it right. So you're nodding, and probably I'm getting it right then. But then the first question is, aren't then a lot of things queer that we don't usually call queer, and wouldn't the term queerness lose its capacity of defining things? That's the first question. And the second question would be, of course, have you about the ideological, I think you call it totalitarian aspect of queerness, because it has become a norm. It has become totalized in a way. I am not sure what you mean by that. If you mean by that it has become sort of an ideology, I will just take it as that, and take the comparison, find the comparison interesting between Stalinist ideology and queer ideologies, whatever you see in them. But so that maybe you could also say something about how you would compare it, or how you would compare queerness and what you're writing about Lysenko and Stalinist culture.
Yeah, actually, thank you for this question/comment, because actually Lysenko and his ideas is from the very beginning were like really artistic, because I mean, in the contemporary definition of biological art and also technological art, because in this process were mobilized like just common people, which were supposed to seed different experimental beings on their local territories, and there was a lot of newspapers about how they're like cooperating with the hogweed to make it stronger, and how every local communist, not proletarian, but every single communist person is involved in this project of agrobiological cultivation And this is, by definition, this is a kind of citizen science. I mean, because like you are trying to involve as many people as you can, and you are like trying to widespread your practice into many different levels and to involve common people into that. And this is what makes this a kind of artistic practice, because agrobiology is not a science. That's why it's something other than science. And the closest like reference which we can make is art, because, but of course this by its consequences, by its like operation, it is like really toxic and really destructive artistic practice. So I guess we would, by this we could see how art could be involved in really violent like operations, and art could be also be not only from ideological perspective violent, but from like material perspective. That's why it's also important to understand like from methodological perspective what agrobiology was. But considering the question about queer and queerification, I would say that the main problem is not with the term queer, but with the practice of queerification itself. Because when you are trying to make queer everything, you are definitely going into the position where all the borders, all the difference are just merged, where everything becomes everything. And which is why we will also referring to the Platonov's term pit, I mean Kotlovan, because actually this is the situation where this altering nature, transforming nature, if it is going to be like if it's going to its logical end, is going to result into something which is not queer anymore, because there is nothing to like compare to this. So because queer is also like the term which grows and exists inside like relative relationship, because something is queer in relation to something other. And in this situation of radical queerification, this term loses its sense, but it's like a practical inflation of the concept. It's not like the inflation which was inside this concept itself. And of course, this is not as so how to say, it's not a so queer term for the Soviet, I mean, ideology, because as we also tried to mention, Viktor Shklovsky, who was like the inventor of the term astranение, he was really, and which we are suggesting to translate as queerification in this context, I mean, he was also like a part of this communist project, at least by the way how Andrei Platonov in his Anti-Sexus is involving him as a fictional tester of his own device. I mean, this is a kind of indicator for us as that this ideology was from the very beginning was related to the notion of queer. But the problem is how this queer was operated inside this system.
I'm sorry, but I cannot say that Lysenko is an artist and something like that, and he did citizen science because he killed a lot of people, and to do his for his agrobiological projects also, Gulag prisoners were used, and so he's a monster who parasitized on Lamarckism, I think, and on Michurin's ideas. So he just was a functionary, and but he tried to invent utopian, pseudo scientific and utopian ideology, which is agrobiology is, and I think we need to divide these two processes. I mean, I should say that it is rather Valentin Mindovsky is a good example of agrobiologist who used other people, I mean, citizen science also to help people understand how plants work, how to raise them, how to seed them, which plant you can eat or not because of disastrous situation after the war. It was a super important question. So yeah, Mindowski was forced to work within agrobiology but so for me it's complicated. I can't agree here concerning Lysenko. It's absolutely.
But I would say that not every art should be good, and this is the question of how we can understand. And this is like a kind of
It was good in art of killing
this
people.
is a dogmatism of to understand that every art should be like freeing us from something, but actually in practice, as we can see in the past and also in the contemporary situation, not every art is supposed to be that. And art could be also totalitarian, because if you are trying to understand what agrobiological practice was from the disciplinary perspective, you cannot locate it because it is not a scientific practice. It is really well mixed with ideology, but it has like some practical and some, because it is really trying to develop this idea of, as Philip said, creative Darwinism, the idea of integrating creativity into the nature of the species and of breeding and educating the species. That is why the artistic dimension of agrobiology is really important, especially in a way that we can understand the practical consequences of this practice. And I guess this is the way how we can understand the why it was resulted into something like this. Because as we may, like when we're, for example, relating to I don't know, for example, for Zizek's theorization about Soviet ideology, we can understand that the Soviet politics was involved in the so-called politicization of aesthetics. And this politicization of aesthetics is important for understanding how art was functioning inside the Soviet Union. I guess this is the way when art and ideology was really well and close connected, I would say.
I saw one question from Anke in the chat, if you like to say the question out loud, but I have an immediate follow-up question, because it's sort of a historization of your own project, and the question whether you would see yourself in the conceptualist tradition, because this approach to make art from totalitarian culture is not new. It has been done since the at least since the 1970s in unofficial culture. And I wonder also whether you see yourself in this tradition, or whether you're trying to do something else. I'm not so sure whether this is just a cliche I'm applying to your work, and also whether conceptualism actually makes sense in this very time, because it's a very different semiotic situation nowadays, with no state ideologies left, or maybe a new one arising, but in Russia, but one that's not so formalized yet. Would you say that a new totalitarian Putinist culture also needs a new conceptualism that accompanies it, as sort of an unofficial culture besides it? Very speculative question, but yeah, go for it.
Yeah, but it's like quite hard to answer, because we are like in the process of something, and it is quite clear that the state of the art, I mean, of the art in contemporary art in Russia was really unstable. That's why we can see that a lot of artists and a lot of not only artists are going outside of Russia, because there is no way to make art. I mean, if you are going to make art in the proper sense of this term, I mean, when you're in need of relating to freedom thinking, of imagination, etc., because for art there is no soil to grow inside contemporary Russia. That is why what we can see today in the remaining institutions, that it is something which is really artificially sustained. It is something which is going like in kind of inertia. This is something which exists only because there was something which was its resource, and now it's like out of the system. Only when they stop their activity. And I guess you, in this sense, you cannot speak about something which is outside of this official context of art.
Well, I don't know, maybe Nikita will disagree with me, but for me, Urban Fauna Lab is very important collective. Of course, sometimes what we also can refer to where dogs run. It's also like very famous art collective in Russia. Another, so as we can see, there are collectivist tendencies in contemporary Russian art. So where dogs run, Urban Fauna Lab, but Urban Fauna Lab from the period when Anastasia Potemkin and Alexei Buldakov worked together. Now they separated. They work separately, I mean, and but they showed us a good example how to do ecological art in Russia using very solid artistic research, very normal approach to Soviet legacy and studying it, and very critical approach to the Soviet legacy, and critical and using these ecological projects of the USSR like a source for political criticism of contemporary Russia. And well, for us, I think it is very important to maintain this this motive or this I don't know, aesthetical move. I mean that ecology can't be out of, well, beyond the politics, I mean out of the politics, and it is really very common now in for contemporary artists who work with ecological topics in Russia, and especially if they are exhibiting it somewhere. So of course you can use Aesop language, but it doesn't work. I should say it doesn't work.
Yeah, but the problem with this art is that it existed before the war. I mean, because it was developed, it was like the main project of the collective were made actually before the war, and actually, for example, Anastasia Potemkin is outside of Russia, and there is no way how we can speak about I mean of contemporary ways of making contemporary art inside Russia, because there is some sort of how to say it is suitable to use the word, I mean it is false, it is untrue to like make art for some reason. It is untrue to make art inside Russia, because you will I mean like visible art.
We all know what happened to Alexandra Skochelenko and where she's now, and we all know what happened to Philip Enzo and his street art works.
Actually,
art in Russia now is impossible.
Yeah, because when you are like going to make it visibly, I mean like publicly in different sense of this term, actually you are going to make something untrue about it. Because if you not do this, you will be in danger. I mean, you need to make a compromises. You need to make a sort of, I don't know, some sort of hiding senses, like trying to conforming the current political and ideological reality. That is why, like by definition, I mean art in the sense of like the free techne is not possible today in Russia. It is possible only outside, but it is like hard to predict how it could be developed outside, because it also should be related to these problems which are local and really, I don't know, dangerous and effective in this negative sense of the term.
Yes, because for now, now for us, it's a huge problem, because we would like to develop our project. We would like to prepare and make some new expeditions, but how to do it in a current situation, I don't know. Because for us, the field work, the field with local ecologies, peculiar territories is very important. This is why we created our laboratory and started our project. And now we did not invent how to continue it for now. Now. And this is a huge problem. And I know that we are not alone in such a situation. So you will find a lot of Russian artists in residences, some residences, I don't know, in France, in Spain, everywhere, in Italy. And actually, everyone has the same problem.
Yeah,
continue.
But we could like only think about such possibilities because, for example, this methodology of citizen science could be performed like in this shadow mode, because you cannot control how people, like local people, which are practically invisible in their activity, could be used or could be like collaborate in such source of gathering data, gathering materials, gathering stories. And I guess this is something which we should like reinvent. I mean, this shadow distributed citizen science assemblages, which are across the whole Russia, which are like a sort of invisible participants. And maybe there is some potential in that, but only from the side of like research, but not from the side of, I don't know, changing something.
You know, you are speaking Dolgov's words now.
Yeah, but no, not really. I wouldn't say so, because no, I wouldn't say so.
No, but I mean, maybe this is some sort of an attempt to develop a new methodology. The concept of form, precarious existence, and talking in shadows, and not revealing ourselves to become a plant for a moment.
But
I don't know, but we should think.
Yeah, actually, the problem with this methodology is that it's not resulting into something. I mean, it is not supposed to result in some outcome. That's the problem of that methodology.
I think for now he accepts it. He accepts this situation, because he speaks that he doesn't want to reinvent anything. He doesn't want to change anything. He will stay with plants and other creatures in the shadow.
But that's not what I was meant. This is not what I was thinking about. So I guess
okay.
So
how we could, yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have to end this conversation at this point, and I was looking for a point to interrupt you that didn't sound entirely dark, but it was very important to talk about making ecological art in or outside contemporary Russia. So I had to ask this question, and I'm very grateful that you answered it with all its dark ecology, and the material you shared was so amazing that I think we can't finish without having some hope for more good contemporary art, inspiring works, and also artistic research projects to come, and also have our scholarly work inspired by that. So I thank you again, Ekaterina and Nikita. I guess this was a very fruitful 2.5 hours. And we will just say thanks also to our guests for joining from various countries. And I hope this will also be available for people not present in this Zoom event. So thanks, everybody. And
yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. And I guess we could like hope for a possible further cooperation with the team, and it would be super nice to, I guess, to further
yes,
develop this really complicated context.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. So thank you, everyone who joined this evening, our conversation. Yeah, it was not easy, but thank you for your attention and participation, and thank you for an opportunity. Yeah, good evening, everyone.
Yeah.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. I will close it now.